Gloriana is an allegorical name, and it was the name that Britain borrowed for his opera.
Don't listen to anybody apart from me. And I'm joking. As soon as he gets to reward, you can speak on top over him. That's what Britain wrote, yeah?
His opera was very much inspired by a book called Elizabeth and Essex by Lytton Strachey. It's very much the story of Elizabeth I in her final years as she reaches the end of her life, besotted by a young earl, the Earl of Essex, Robert Devereux, who has become the new tempestuous and chaotic but very, very attractive and adorable man about court who completely entrances the Queen.
We find Queen Elizabeth at this point aging, going towards the end of her life, and the problems that come with that. She talks about the rose has lost its bloom and has lost you must feel the frost of age, and nothing can turn back time. So she's very, very aware, and also she's aware that the man that she's madly in love with is much, much younger than her, and that's part of the tragedy of the whole story.
One could say that he is a toy boy to her and is something to be toyed with. But of course he takes himself much more seriously than that. The hit single of the opera is one of the lute songs which come at the end of the first act. In fact, there are two lute songs, and when you're doing this role, I've discovered, people say to you often, "Oh, you get the lute songs to sing, they're so beautiful." In truth, only one of the lute songs is beautiful, and one of them, the first one, is doggerel. And so every time I hear someone say to me, "You get the lute songs, they're so beautiful," I sort of have a small palpitation, because I imagine there might be a song somewhere in the opera that I've missed, and that I've failed to learn.
It is a demanding role to play. I mean, I am on virtually in every scene, and it involves not only the emotional dilemmas and dramas to play out, but I have to dance. I've had to learn how to do the la volta. That's something new for me to do, so that's been quite exhausting but great fun. Elizabeth I was playing the part of a man. She had to be a woman in a man's world. It was very tough for her. And she says to Essex, "I am a woman though I be a queen, and still a woman though I be a prince." Of her character is having to be totally suppressed the whole time so that she can cope with the politics and the wheeler dealing that's happening around her.
The chief rivalry, not for her affections, but within the court, is between Essex, the Earl of Essex, and Robert Cecil, who is the Queen's Lord Treasurer. He's her, if you like, her Prime Minister. One of these two men has to succeed and one of them has to be destroyed.
Boris Johnson's sister said that Boris wanted, when they were children, to be king of the world. And I think Essex wants to be king of the world. In a megalomaniac way, Essex doesn't think about the consequences of his flirtation with Elizabeth in terms of their relationship. He thinks of it in terms of his career. But their flirtation is genuine, and they are pulled towards each other by an invisible force. They can't deny that.
premiered here in this opera house 60 years ago this month. That's not just opera trivia, of course. June 1953 was the month of the coronation of the second Elizabeth. It was the beginning of the new Elizabethan age. Yet, the opera Gloriana is about the final years of Elizabeth I. The set is actually a coronation hall built in 1953. And you see always this sort of flux between the two centuries, between the two ages, between the two queens, between the period of the Tudors and the period of the Windsors. It's a fascinating way to tell and retell a story which has different perspectives for us, looking back at two different periods.
I think Benjamin Britten didn't shirk from the reality of the situation, and he didn't try and present something in the year of the coronation that was sort of like Merry England. He actually shocked people by going into the side of this woman's character that was perhaps more sensitive than she's been portrayed in other things. And she comes out in this as being so deep, multifaceted, very clever. She's very sharp-witted. She's got an answer for everything. But she's also tormented.
It's a glorious opera to perform and to conduct. For the orchestra, it's very virtuosic. It's, of course, a tribute to the age of Elizabeth I because it contains references, never exact quotations, but many references to the styles of British music and English music from the past. So you'll hear, for example, music that starts out as an Elizabethan dance, but is immediately infused with a harmonic language, which is entirely Britten's own, much more modern and much more moulded in his modern way. And it veers from the tiniest, most delicate accompaniment from maybe one flute and one harp, right the way across to these enormous pieces for the whole chorus and ensemble on stage, and really symphonic stature in the pit. It's on a par with the writing that Verdi would have made if he'd have been alive in 1950. I think that the sense of Britain being very much within the great tradition of opera writing is really, really strong. Nobody else really came close to that in this country, I don't think.